Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Nebraska is recognized.
I ask for unanimous consent to submit for the record a CBO post from 2021 examining the Biden administration's $80 billion proposal and stating that CBO projects the proposal would make the IRS's budget more than 90% larger than it is in CBO's July 2021 baseline projections and would more than double the IRS's staffing.
Without objection.
I now yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Malliotakis.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at a time when we should be tightening our belts, Democrats plan to spend $80 billion on 87,000 IRS agents, doubling the size of the department, and this is meant to nickel and dime, audit and harass America's small businesses and families who they know cannot afford the legal fees to fight this army. 87,000 IRS agents, when we only have 20,000 Border Patrol agents in an unprecedented crisis with terrorists, convicted criminals, and illegal immigrants crossing in addition to fentanyl. 5,000, we only have 5,000 drug enforcement agents to stop traffickers who are peddling this poison to our kid, the #1 killer of young Americans. 87,000 IRS agents is more than twice the size of the FBI and more than the entire staff of the Department of Justice. We know that our colleagues on the other side love taxes, they love spending, they love big government, and they love bureaucracy, but the American people don't, and that is why we should be voting yes on this legislation today.
Yield 1 minute, or 45 seconds. 45 seconds to the lady from New York, Ms. Malliotakis.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. President Biden's dangerous anti-energy policies have hindered our energy independence. His curbing production, sitting on leases and permits, canceling Keystone Pipeline, they've all led to high gas prices, heating costs, food costs, and has left the Northeast heating fuel supply at its lowest point since 1951. Then, to cover up for his failed policies, he raided 266 million barrels, or 40% of our SPR, meant for real emergencies like natural disasters. This was not meant to sell to China. It's now at its lowest point in 40 years. We are vulnerable as a result of it, and this bill stops the president from depleting our resources and pushes him to refill it. Not with Russian oil, not with Saudi oil, not with Venezuelan oil, and certainly not with Iranian oil, but with American oil to protect our national security and the economy.
Here. Good job.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Malliotakis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to highlight one of the crises that we're facing in our country. And it's obvious to so many, except unfortunately so many in this House, that we have a crisis at our southern border. We've not only seen over 4.7 million people cross illegally, many of whom are claiming asylum despite not qualifying for asylum, and we're also seeing record levels of fentanyl killing so many Americans each and every single day. We must take a stand to secure our border, to stop this flow of illegal drugs, to stop this mass illegal migration. And when you talk about the numbers of 4.5, you know, when you think about the number of people who have actually evaded our government, who have evaded any interaction with our law enforcement and CBP agents, you're talking about 1.2 million people. That is more than twice the size of Staten Island, the borough in New York City I represent. It's outrageous to think that we would have individuals entering into our country illegally and we don't know what their intentions are, where they're coming from, why they're here. And that is what scares me the most as an individual who represents the city of New York. We know that 98 suspected terrorists on our terrorist watch list crossed the border last fiscal year. We know so far this year there's been another 38, and that should be alarming to every single person in this country. We must know who is entering our country and what their intentions are. And to allow this amount of people to evade law enforcement, to evade any interaction with our government is a very dangerous action on behalf of this administration. House Republicans believe that Secretary Mayorkas has completely abdicated his responsibility to keep our country secure, and we will be moving forward with hearings to expose what he is doing. And I do believe at the end of the day, it warrants him to be impeached and removed from his position. Also, I want to highlight how the federal government's lack of action at the border, coupled by my state legislature and governor's horrible actions in New York, have led to what we're seeing now in terms of a rise in crime. First of all, New York is dealing with major actions in terms of crime, car thefts, people being released. In fact, just read yesterday in my district, 20-year-old guy who's been stealing cars. He's being released right back onto the street. It's been about 3 times. The first time he was arrested, it was for 20 counts of car thefts. Let's now look at what we're doing here. When I went down to Federal Plaza and I met with our ICE officials, well, they're saying that New York City is not cooperating with any detainer requests for people who are criminals. That means they either were convicted of a crime in their home country or they were convicted of a crime here. It is the worst of the worst in society that ICE is trying to remove from our country, and our local officials won't cooperate. I think that's outrageous that the city of New York continues to harbor people who are not only in this country illegally, but are committing crimes on top of it. And just the other day, New York City residents found out that they're paying to house, they're paying to feed, they're paying to provide services to individuals who were shoplifting in our state. Think about that. So now, not only crossing our country illegally, they're committing crimes. They were released back onto the street thanks to our state's ridiculous bail law. And on top of it, the taxpayers of the city of New York are paying to house and feed them. How does that make any sense, and how is that in the best interest of our citizens? I'm the daughter of immigrants. I understand and appreciate the aspirations of the American dream. We need to work together to address what is happening at our border. We need to work together to ensure that those legitimate asylum seekers are not getting stuck in the bureaucracy and the red tape because of those individuals who are here claiming asylum when they don't qualify. We have to work on our visa system to ensure that we address the labor shortage. You know, we should have more visas for employee-sponsored visas. We should have family-sponsored immigration as well. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to secure our border, and let's impose some common sense. Thank you.
The speaker is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from the great state of New York, Nicole Malliotakis.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard from my colleagues the reasons why the Representative Omar should be removed from this committee. But I feel like all the reasons have not just yet been stated, which is why I rise to add for the record. We've heard about the comments that were made regarding anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli views, but I rise to add to the record that as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I've sat there and heard the representative actually spew anti-American rhetoric as well. I've been in that committee room where the representative equates Israel and the United States to Hamas and the Taliban. Absolutely unacceptable for a member of that committee. I've also heard the representative equate that it is the United States' fault that there is turmoil in Venezuela. That is not because of the oppressive socialist and communism that has spread throughout Central and South America. In Venezuela, at the hands of the Maduro and Hugo Chavez regimes. That is unacceptable. And as a New York representative, to hear the representative belittle, to try to diminish the worst terrorist attack on United States soil on September 11, 2001, as some people did something, that is unacceptable as well. And I hold the same standard for this side of the aisle that I do the other, because when another colleague on my side said something about 9/11, I also voted to have her removed from the Education Committee because I thought that was inappropriate. So I'm being consistent here, and I hope my colleagues will do the same to show that this is about consistency and accountability, because we should not have an individual with those views on the committee that is tasked with representing our country and our Congress to foreign nations. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Fentanyl Act. This is the Drug Enforcement Administration's top legislative priority, and if we do not take action to permanently schedule fentanyl-related substances, we will see many fentanyl-related substances becoming street legal. We will see law enforcement lose their authority to seize these extremely lethal drugs. We will see drug traffickers continue to be empowered to push these deadly drugs on our children, and we will see our U.S. Customs and Border Protections lose their authority to seize these substances crossing the border. In 2022, last year, more than 109,000 people died from fentanyl overdoses, with the majority coming from illicit fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances. It is the #1 killer of young Americans aged 18 to 49. In addition to that, it's important to note that the DEA has announced results of a years-long national operation, Operation Last Mile, which specifically targeted fentanyl traffickers that run by the drug cartels operating right here in the United States. According to the Department of Justice, there are 2 cartels who use multi-city distribution networks, violent local street gangs, and individual dealers across the U.S. to drive addiction. The DEA's operation led to the arrest of over 3,300 individuals and the seizure of nearly 44 million fentanyl pills, more than 6,500 pounds of fentanyl powder, more than 91,000 pounds of methamphetamine, and 8,500 firearms, and more than $100 million. The fentanyl powder and pills seized alone equate to nearly 193 million deadly doses of fentanyl removed from our communities across the United States. It is so incredibly important that we not only pass the halt fentanyl to give DEA, to keep DEA having the tools that they need to do their job, but we also passed House Republicans' border security package. We know that the drug traffickers are raking in $13 billion a year, human trafficking and drug trafficking over our southern border. And according to the DEA, the Mexican criminal organizations are now the most prominent wholesale-level heroin traffickers in the DEA Chicago, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Washington Field Division areas of responsibility, and have greatly expanded their presence in New York City. We must pass our border security bill in the Senate, and we must pass the halt fentanyl bill here in the House and in the Senate as well. Thank you very much. I yield back.
From Missouri is recognized.
I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Malliotakis.
The gentlelady is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the Rolling Stones said, you can't always get what you want, you get what you need. And we need to avert a default that would stop checks to our seniors, benefits for our veterans, hurt the U.S. dollar, and Americans' retirement savings. We also need to change the fiscal trajectory of our nation. And this bill does both, by reducing inflationary spending for the first time in over a decade, with the largest savings in history, imposing spending caps and adding checks and balances on the executive branch. We started from a place where the President and the Senate refused to negotiate, and we ended with conservative wins that include stopping Biden's plan to hire additional IRS agents this year, clawing back unused COVID funds, expanding work requirements to reduce dependency on public benefits, and cutting costly red tape that slows down critical infrastructure projects. While no deal is perfect, This is only the beginning, and we cannot allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. Republicans under the leadership of Speaker McCarthy have restored balance to government. We've put an end to the Democrats' massive inflationary spending sprees, and we will continue to fight for the American taxpayers as we proceed in this process to stop reckless policies that fuel inflation. I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to talk about how the crisis created at our border by President Biden's executive orders is affecting my city, and also the Senate's refusal to pass H.R. 2, the Border Security Act that we passed in May, and in addition, only exacerbated by my mayor, Eric Adams' insistence that these individuals who entered our country are entitled to free housing at taxpayer expense, where New York City is now seeing over 200 shelters and is housing more illegal immigrants than actual citizens of New York. Not all of these individuals are innocent asylum seekers. Let's be honest and let's be clear. First of all, many of them are using the generosity of this country to gain entry. We know that more than half, between 50% and two-thirds of these individuals are denied their asylum cases when they come to court. There are also many who have already been arrested for committing crimes in our community. At just one of the 205 migrant shelters, the Roosevelt Hotel, there have been dozens of arrests, mostly for domestic violence, but robberies, assaulting police officers as well. And earlier this year, 4 individuals that were housed at the Watson Hotel were arrested for shoplifting tens of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise from Macy's at Roosevelt Field Mall. Just this week, an illegal immigrant who was previously released by Customs and Border Protection and the New York State Police was arrested for murder on September 2nd, He was in our country and on our streets despite having a warrant out for his arrest for a previous stabbing. And there were 2 individuals who were accused of sexual assault in Erie County in western New York. Even the Erie County executive, an elected Democrat, has had enough of what is going on, demanded that Mayor Adams pause putting more of these quote-unquote asylum seekers in his community until these security threats are addressed. Now, this Monday we marked 22 years since the 9/11 attacks. Democrats, Republicans say never forget. Yet here we are in a situation with an open border that just in the first 10 months of this fiscal year, 146 people who appeared on the FBI terror watch list were apprehended at our southern border. Combined with last fiscal year, we're talking about 250 individuals. What we should be more concerned about, however, is the 1.7 million individuals who are the gotaways, meaning they had zero interaction with our law enforcement or our government. They are in the interior of the country. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. We don't know what their intentions are. That's the estimate that CBP is saying. Yes, we've had millions of people cross our border, but guess what? 1.6 million of them, we don't know who they are or what their intentions are. And this should be concerning considering that the FBI has just confirmed that ISIS is smuggling Uzbeki asylum seekers across our southern border. ISIS. And an Iranian national was caught in the interior after Iran has threatened revenge and harsh retaliation against the United States. And they said they were going to conduct terrorism on our soil. Yes, the same Iran that Joe Biden just gave $6 billion to. 107,000 Americans have died from overdoses last year. That's more than two-thirds of those deaths, and two-thirds of those deaths are attributed to mostly fentanyl. The DEA recently made over 3,000 arrests of drug cartel networks operating right here in the United States of America, thanks to Joe Biden's open border. The deaths are equivalent to a commercial airline crashing every single day. So I ask my colleagues, on the Senate side, when are you going to pass our H.R. 2, our Border Security Act? If the president is not going to undo his executive orders, we need to take action. The House passed it. Unfortunately, I think every Democrat in this chamber voted against it. But let's see the Senate do its job, pass H.R. 2. If the president's not going to undo the crisis that he created, then we must do it for him. I yield back.